Well, I'm happy to be with you today, happy to have Mass with you this morning, and happy to be in your lovely city, and happy especially to be here on the feast of our Blessed Mother. It's a great thing for us. Last night we had a lot of trouble with the microphone, and people couldn't hear me. I'm reminded of a story of the bishop I used to work for when I was a priest. He had a very soft voice, and he tended to trail off at the end of sentences. He tended to get lost in thought as he was talking. You know that type? I'm the same way. One time, one of the priests said, he was listening to him give a homily in the cathedral. He said, I wish he would learn that those things are project sounds, not thoughts. And I sometimes forget that too. I think, well, you must know. I'm thinking it. You must know already, right? So, sounds and not thoughts. I have trouble with that. I want to set the stage for today by tell you a little story about St. Joan of Arc and one of her generals. And then I want to kind of lead you through a simple thing. I want you to understand on a very deep level just what a wonder you are. A wonder you are. I'm going to take you through that. Because if I don't take you through that, you're going to miss 9/10 of the mystery in your lives. You're going to miss that. And why would you want to miss that? That's you. That's when God speaks to you. So I want to take you through that, and will in the course of the day. Now, this little story about Joan of Arc. Joan, the Lord spoke to her. She had her voices. The Lord spoke to her and told her to go to the king and to have the king crowned and to lead France to freedom from Great Britain, right? You know that story in general. Okay? Now, Joan did that after lots of obstacles, lots of problems. She did that, and they were ready in kind of the staging area, and they brought in one old-time crusty general who was going to whip this group into shape, right? Going to whip them into shape. And his name was Lahire. His last name, Lahire, okay? And this is the way Mark Twain, you know who Mark Twain was? The American writer. Mark Twain had a peculiar fascination with Joan of Arc. And he wrote a lovely fictionalized version of her story. And this is a page from Mark Twain's treatment of Joan of Arc. He's talking about Lahire and little Joan. Big soldier, little girl. Right? She's 17 years old. Right? Joan and he, Mark Twain said, were inseparable. And a quaint, pleasant contrast they made. He was so big, she so little. He was so gray and so far along in his pilgrimage of life. She so youthful. His face was so bronzed and scarred. Hers so fair and pink, so fresh, so smooth. She was so gracious. He was so stern. She was so pure, so innocent. He was a cyclopedia of sin. Get the picture of Lahire now, huh? Get the picture. He was a cyclopedia of sin. In her eye were stored all charity and compassion. In his eye, there was lightning. When her glance fell upon you, it seemed to bring benediction and the peace of God. But with his, it brought something different altogether. All 3 days they rode through the camp a dozen times a day, visiting every corner of it, observing, inspecting, perfecting, and wherever they appeared, the enthusiasm broke forth. They rode side by side, he a great figure of brawn and muscle, she a little masterwork of roundness and grace. Isn't that nice? A little masterwork of roundness and grace. He was a fortress of iron. She a shining statuette of silver. And when the reformed raiders and bandits, those who brought together to form the army, when they caught sight of them going through the camp, they spoke out with affection and welcome in their voice and said, "There they come, Satan and the page of Christ." You get the contrast between the two, okay? Now, all this time they were doing this, these roughly 3 days in Blois, they're preparing to move toward Orleans. All while they were doing this, Joan worked earnestly and tirelessly in order to bring Lahir to God. She wasn't exactly good at that, to bring him to God. Okay? To rescue him from the bondage of sin. To breathe into his stormy heart the serenity and peace of religion. She urged, she begged him to pray. To pray. But he stood there, 3 days of their stay in Blois, stood there begging almost piteously to be let off. To be let off from just that one thing, that impossible thing. He would do anything else, anything. Command and he would obey. He would go through fire for her if she said the word. But spare him this, only this, for he could not pray. He had never prayed. He was ignorant of how to frame a prayer. He had no words to put it in. That's that. He could not pray. He ran from that. Tried to get away from her. But the magnetic appeal of the woman kept him close. Who can believe it? Mark Twain says, she carried even that point. She won that incredible victory. She made Lahir pray. Wonderful. She brought him to the point of prayer. He stood there before her. It shows, I think, that nothing was impossible for Joan of Arc. And that's her whole story. There's this magnificent, brief meteor that swept through the sky. It's a magnificent story. But the point I want you to understand is, she needed him to pray. And he could not do that. I need you to pray. And you can do that, and you can't do that. If you're like me. You can, but you can't. You don't know quite how to do it. I want to talk to you about that. And in order to talk to you about that, I have to tell you a little bit about the wonder of yourself. Because I suspect you don't really understand the depth of what a wonderful creature you are. Okay? So let's try that one. In one of his homilies, Pope Leo the Great said this, "Agnosce o Christiane dignitatem tua." Leo the Great talks about it. Back in the 5th century, everybody spoke Latin. "Agnosce o Christiane dignitatem tua." That phrase is usually translated as, "Be aware, O Christian, of your dignity." Be aware of it. Or know your dignity. And that's a fine way to translate it. But it doesn't really catch all the nuances of the word that St. Leo used. Okay? Agnosce is a word meaning knowing, but it's a knowing beyond knowing. It's not the knowing you do in your everyday life. It's a knowing beyond the knowing. It's a knowing that goes deeper than it, runs deeper than that. Okay? It's a knowing that's more than a mathematical formula. It's a knowing that's more than just the pure exercise of your logical reason. All those are wonderful gifts. It's a knowing beyond that. It's a knowing that involves the whole person, body and soul. It is to be aware of, to recognize, to feel in your bones and blood. You got that? You understand what I'm getting at? It's that kind of knowing that it wells up from inside. Dignitatem is usually translated dignity. That's what it means, yes. But it has more to do, on St. Leo's lips, it has more to do with the uniqueness of you. The uniqueness of you. It has something to do with the priceless character of your life. Absolutely priceless. Okay? It is an awareness, as I told you at the outset, an awareness of what a wonder you are. And really let that sink into you, what a wonder you are. Why are you a wonder? You are a wonder because you have been created. Okay? That's where the Catholic faith starts. You were created. The Lord Himself intervened directly in the lovemaking of your parents at some stage. Intervened directly and created your soul directly. He intervened to create just you and no one else. You're unique. That's what I mean about the wonder of it. You're just you and no one else. Why are you a wonder? Because of creation, yes. But also because the same Lord recreated you through the words and the works of His Son Jesus. You were called to baptism. And what that means, in our sacramental theology, that means you were literally plunged into the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You rose out of the water, a new creation. It's part of the wonder of you, a new creation. You were given new life. You became a new creation. Now, that's a wonderful thing. You can accept that and be happy for that. It's a wonderful thing. But what it does is to give you a task to perform. If the Lord has plunged you into His death and resurrection, has made you a new creature, He's done that for a purpose. What do you need to do about it? There's a task to perform. And what we are in principle, we are the new creation in Jesus Christ. What we are in principle, we must become in practice. Okay? What we are objectively, as a matter of fact, when you are baptized, you are plunged into the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You receive His sanctifying grace. All these wonderful things happen to you. That is an objective fact, whether you know it or not. You don't if you're a child. You don't know that as a baby. You're plunged into that. That's an objective fact. What you have to do is to grow up to that fact, is to take it in subjectively, to make it your own. That's what you need to do. Okay? What we are in grace, we must become in behavior. And we like to make a real split between the things we do and the things we believe. What work? What work? We have to be of a piece. We have to be consonant with ourselves. We are a new creation. We have to become a new creation. Now, that's the essential wonder of who you are. The Lord made a world, and He made the world, and because He's God, He can say this. This world is not quite complete yet. This world, I met a young lady named Vanessa a while ago. This world doesn't have a Vanessa in it yet. This world doesn't have a Jacqueline in it yet. Doesn't have a Ronald in it yet. There's a sense in which it's true to say, the Lord made the world just for you. Just for you. He couldn't imagine having a world without you in it. He loved you that much. He prizes you that much. You're that important to Him. That's the essential wonder of it. You need to grasp that, or you're going to miss so many things the Lord is trying to do with you. The essential wonder of you is that you have a personal vocation. A personal vocation. Vocation is at the very heart of your story. Now, what do I mean by vocation? Think of it this way. You know the story of the Bible. You know, Moses and Abraham and all the way up to Jesus. You know those things, okay? It's not by chance that you were born here, wherever your here was, rather than there. Not by chance that I was born in the middle of Kansas and not in the middle of British Columbia. Not by chance. It's not by chance that you went to this school rather than to that school. It's not by chance that I went to school in Ottawa, in Ontario, to study theology. Middle of Kansas, Ottawa, Ontario. How did that happen? What a fluke. What a coincidence. What a pure chance. Not by chance, I know that. You need to know that too. It's not by chance you're listening to. It's not by chance that you married this person rather than that person. It just kind of thrown together. It just kind of happened. It was all by chance. Not by chance. Not by chance. It was not by chance that you followed this work, whatever work you followed in your life, rather than another work. Nowadays, we follow many different fields of work. Not by chance that those things happen. What you need to know is the Lord is intimately involved in those things. He's working through them. That's what I mean it's not by chance. In a world made by God, there is no chance. Okay? Take that to the bank. In a world made by God, there is no chance. What I mean by that is, what we call chance, what we call fate, what we call accident, what we call circumstance, those are the things the Lord uses to work His intricate designs in your life. That's what He uses those to work those designs in your life. So it's not by chance that these things happen. If you think it's by chance, if you adopt the secular way of looking at things, oh, this is pure chance, pure faith. You know what you're missing? You're missing 9/10 of what's going on in your life. You're missing the active ingredient, the moving, percolating ingredient of God's grace. You're missing that. Not by chance. The fundamental element of your vocation, of my vocation, is the call to a life with our Creator, a life with our Redeemer. We're called to communion, you and I. Called to communion. Okay? Called to holiness. And you need to grasp what that means. Its height and its breadth, its length and its depth. Because if you don't grasp that, you're going to go through life, you know, a dull little life on a dull gray day in a dull neighborhood. You go through life and everything is just gray and bland. And you're missing the color. You're missing the movement. You're missing the excitement of life. I'm telling you, the Lord made you. The Lord is intimately involved in your life. Do you know that? Does it make a difference when you get up in the day? Does life seem like an adventure to you every morning? It should. You're a new creation every morning. You're called deeper to the Lord every morning. It should. Remember the call of Jeremiah? You know, the story of Jeremiah, the great prophet. Jeremiah was one of the prophets that Jesus loved most. Jeremiah was so like Jesus. Jesus could see himself in Jeremiah. Remember the call of Jeremiah? I would have you meditate on it because it will help you understand your own life. the structure of your own call from God. This is what Jeremiah says. This is what the Lord said to Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed you in the womb, I already knew you. Before you came forth from the womb, I consecrated you. I set you apart. Before you came forth from the womb, I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Prophet to the nations. Now, the trick is this. What he said to Jeremiah, he says to you. To you. He says it to me. Each one of us, if we have ears to hear that secret call, each one of us is a recipient of the same thing. Recipient of the same thing. What it amounts to is this, as I told you a minute ago. The Lord God Almighty, the great God, was thinking of you when he sent Moses to free his people from Egypt. I wasn't even born yet. Time doesn't matter to God. You're already in his mind. He was thinking of you when he sent Moses to free the people from Egypt. He was thinking of you when he called Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees. Oh, what a lovely place it is. Ur of the Chaldees. When Abraham was called to leave his family, to leave his place, to go off and follow the Lord, the life of the nomad, he was thinking of you. I can't believe it. Believe it. He was thinking of you. He was thinking of you when he molded the mud and the bone into an Adam and Eve. You were on his mind. You were in his mind. He had plans for you. He had hopes for you. He had desires for you. You were already there. And if you don't know that, you miss the beauty of it all. You miss the magic of it all. He was thinking of you at the time of Adam and Eve. He was thinking of you when he sent his angel to the maiden Mary. You know, we saw the pre-story of that today with the Immaculate Conception. She was born free from sin in order to be the mother and the companion of Jesus. He was thinking of you when he sent the angel to her. He was thinking of you when Jesus left the confines of Nazareth finally to begin his public ministry. He was thinking of you when Jesus succumbed to hostility and malice. That was his daily bread. Hostility, malice, persecution. He was thinking of you during all that. He was thinking of you when Jesus succumbed to the malice and ended his ministry in a humiliating, barbaric kind of death. You were already there. You were on his mind. That death issued, of course, into the stunning, splendid resurrection. It was all done for you. You were there. That was as the Lord said, wrote it on the paper, I'm going to make Jacqueline today, and I'm going to do all these things. You were already there when he was doing these mighty works. The Magnale Dei, he always spoke of. The magnificent works of God. The overwhelming works of God. He was thinking of you. From all eternity, he was thinking of you. Now I want you to get that firmly fixed in your minds, in your heads, in your hearts. There is ample reason for saying, as I told you, that the world was made for you. You are why the incarnation happened. You are why the world was redeemed. And I mean the unique you. Not like anybody else. I mean the unrepeatable you. I mean the never before seen you. I mean the never to be seen again you. Just you. Grasp that. Own that. And let gratitude well up in your hearts. Because that's the way That's what he made you do. Right? Thinking of you. From all eternity, you have been known through and through. Most of us feel we're not really known. Remember the story of Kafka, the story of the trial? The man is in the dock, and the prosecuting attorney is going on and on and on, giving you every last detail of this poor man's story. And the man's sitting in the dock saying, no, that's not me. That's not what I was about. That's not the real me. We don't feel known. The Lord knew you from before there was a world, through and through. And more than that, He loved you before there was a world, through and through. You wouldn't be the wonder you are without His love. You know, theologians say, well, why in the world did God make the world? Well, it's just like God. It's like Him to want to give gifts apart from Himself. That's the Word. That's you. That's me. It's like God to give. It's like God. It's so like God to give that there is a kind of inner giving inside God. That's what we call the truth. That's the wonder of you. Now, you, the next step, if you grasp that wonder, the next step is you are called to do something. You are called to a special task. You're called to a special mission. There's a lovely story written about 1902 from Henry James. Henry James was an American writer who expatriate, lived in Great Britain most of his life. He was a very celebrated novelist. His brother William was a great psychologist. Many of you probably studied him when you were in school. Henry James wrote a short story in 1902, and it was called The Beast in the Jungle. The Beast in the Jungle. And there's a story about a young man who had a very heightened level of consciousness. A heightened level of consciousness that he was called to something special. He was right. But I've just been telling you, you're called to something special. At a heightened level of consciousness. And he always thought something was coming. That's how he got the title. Think of a beast, tiger in the jungle, stalking, adding closer and closer. Something was coming. This man went through life thinking something special was coming. He told a friend of his, from my earliest time, as the deepest thing within me, I've had the sense of being kept for something rare and strange. Rare and strange. Lovely mind. And I'm telling you, what James imagined in that story, that was about you. That was about you. You're being kept for something rare and strange. Of course, what is it? This man went through life watching, waiting for something to come. The same thing was true. Did you know Cardinal Newman, any of you, the great British theologian here in this, of course? Cardinal Newman, in 1833, the winter and the spring of 1833, Newman was struggling and praying. Newman was a very brilliant man. Newman was a genius. There's no way to categorize Newman. He was just a flat genius. A very brilliant man. And he spent a great deal of time in anguish and prayer. He was an Anglican priest, but he was getting increasingly dissatisfied with his church. That when it becomes a state religion, that can cause a lot of problems, leading you away from the purity of the faith. He was struggling with that. So he spent a lot of time praying and struggling in the winter and spring of 1833. And what he prayed to, what was coming out of that was what we know in history as the Oxford movement. That was a mighty a wave of reform in the Anglican Church at that time, a kind of a return to the fathers of the church, that sort of thing, back to the sources of the church. And Newman, of course, was one of the key leaders of that Oxford movement. So during the winter and the spring of 1833, he was praying and moving toward this, At that time he said this. He said, he had a deep and abiding sense that God has created me to do him some definite service. I met so many people already today, and so many people last night, who are involved in some definite service to the church. Wonderful. Newman had a sense that the Lord had made him for some definite service. Lord, show me what it is, okay? He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have my mission. He's committed some work to me he's not given to another. Why? Because you're not me. Because I'm not you. I can't do it the way you do it. You can't do it the way I do. He's given me a definite thing to do, part of which is being here in front of you, I guess. Given me something to do that only I can do because he made me that way. Same thing is true for all of you. Same thing is true for all of you. So what was true of the James character, what was true of Cardinal Newman, is also true for you. And again, on the broken record here, if you don't see that, if you don't grasp that, if you're not open to that, you're missing 9/10 of the wonder that you are. There's a wealth of richness inside you ready to well up. You don't know that? You don't know that? You miss it. That's what you're made for. You're made to flower forth, to blossom in this world that the Lord loves. He needed you as his blossom. And we close our eyes, we sleep our way through life. You know the drill. Now, what we often miss, maybe I got you to think about the wonder of your life, I got you to this point now. What we often miss is the temporal character of our vocation. Okay? God lives outside time, of course. We live in time, a succession of moments, a history. We live in time. And we often tend to miss the temporal side of our vocation. Okay? What do I mean by that? We often think, I've heard many people tell me this. I give a talk to a group of adults and talk about, say, the sacrament of marriage. Say, you're all called to a particular vocation, and you. I gave a retreat to deacons and their wives recently. You're called to, they say, I'm married. That's my vocation. That's it. Or I could look at myself and say, well, I was ordained a priest in 1969. That's my vocation. That's it. It's all done. Got it all figured out. Got this one whacked, right? We don't have it whacked. Why? Because when you married, Anne has been married a little while in the back. I see her here. When she married, I bet you she's not the woman then that she is now. And I bet you when she comes to celebrate her 10th anniversary and her 25th anniversary, I bet you she has grown. I bet you she has changed. What does that mean? That means the Lord is speaking to her heart, saying, Anne, don't go this way, go that way. Don't do this, do that. We grow because we live in time. We're on a pilgrimage. That's what life is, a pilgrimage. Okay? What you're doing in terms of vocation, marriage, priesthood, single life, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, don't ever get in the habit of thinking, oh, that's it. I'm a priest and that's it. That's all there is to it. It is never all there is to it. Never all there is to it. There's a marked fluidity, a flowing character to life, a marked fluidity. Our vocation grows. Our vocation changes over time. The secret exchange between you and God, this is going on all the time. You're there because He knows you, because He loved you, because He's sustaining you in existence. The secret exchange that's going on all the time goes on hour by hour, goes on day by day, week by week, year by year. I was at the deathbed of my mother a few years ago. She was having a very hard time dying. And it was dragging on day after day after day. And I know people were wondering, why is it so hard to die? Well, to the eyes of faith, it really wasn't so hard. The Lord wasn't finished speaking to her yet. The Lord wasn't finished fashioning and refashioning her yet. That was still going on. Luckily my mother had dementia, and she kind of drifted away from the outer world. She said, poor lady, she can't, be what she was before, and now she's in some gray, dark place, and you can't. No. When we die, we kind of separate ourselves from the world because we're more mesmerized. We're more overwhelmed by the deep conversations that are taking place in us. That's where the old German mystics, the Riemann mystics, they used to use a Latin phrase, scintilla anime. Scintilla anime. The fine point. Remember Michelangelo's picture of the creation, of God reaching out His hand, and Adam is reaching out his hand, and the two fingers are coming to touch. They touch at the fine point, the scintilla anime. And I think when we go back to God, we all our energies are focused on reaching that fine point. That's the wonder of it all. Okay? So not only the secret exchange goes on day after day, the Lord's bringing you closer to Himself. And He brings you closer to Himself. I'll talk about this later. Through the persons, the places, and the things of your life. It's not rocket science. 10 Commandments are not rocket science. The persons and places and things of your life. This is how the Lord brings you to Himself. So, not only is there a vocation for each one of you, not only does Anne have a vocation to be a married woman, she has a vocation within a vocation. Because she has to grow day by day. Not only did I have a vocation to be a priest, I had a vocation within a vocation. I eventually woke up one day and found myself a bishop. I didn't plan that. I didn't have a secret plan, secret 5-year plan. It happened. I told John Paul, bishops get to meet. John Paul is the one who selected me to be bishop. And I visited him a number of times and had private conversations with him. I told him one time, it was kind of a coincidence to me that when I was born in 1942. I'm 70 years old. I was born in 1942. I was born in the spring, in April. And at that very time, in Poland, a young man was moving away from the theater to the seminary, occupied by the Nazis, working in mines, working in quarries, I guess he was. He was moving away from the theater and coming to grips with this call. The Lord wanted him to be a priest. That happened at the same time I was breathing my first breath. If he hadn't followed that call, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have been a bishop. And, I saw him the last time before he died. I was in Rome at Thanksgiving time for the Unlimited visit, and he was really in failing health then, and you had meetings with him, but you had to carry the conversation. So I took advantage of it. And he was in pretty good really good shape that day. He had a hard time talking, but he was following and paying attention. I said, it always struck me, Holy Father, as a great coincidence. And I told him the story about his own journey to the priesthood and my journey to life. And how at some point, those two lines converge. And I used the phrase, isn't it a remarkable coincidence? And he kind of straightened himself up. You know, he was slumped and the Parkinson was the problem. Straightened himself up and said, no coincidence. That's the wonder of the vocation. That's what it is, a vocation within a vocation for each of us. That's what it means to be a temporal creature. God calls you daily. That's what it means to be a temporal creature. That call deepens daily. And if you miss that, I'm really sorry. You're missing the wonder of who you are. And the Lord made you to grasp that wonder and to live it to the full with all the vitality. You're not the husband now that you were when you first married. You're not the wife now that you were when you were first married. I'm not the priest now that I was when I was first ordained. At least I hope I'm not. The divine artist. You have to think of it in terms of Jeremiah again, the potter. The divine artist at work at his wheel. He's always at work within us. Always shaping and reshaping. Always touching and retouching. Always calling and calling again. That's the wonder of who you are. Like here, when Joan was talking to him, when she was almost driven to get him to pray, she was asking him to come into that world. Come out of the world of the macho world of soldiering. Come into the world where the Creator is trying to speak to you, where the Creator is trying to draw you, to lead you to Himself. That's what she was doing. Now, what I'm saying, I'll give you all that as the background, and I'll conclude with this. God alone can teach you how to respond to the wonder you are. God alone can do that. God alone can teach you how to pray by speaking to your hearts. Okay? You say, well, I know how to pray. I learned all the prayers when I was a little kid. I say all those prayers every day. I used to be chaplain in a nursing home, and the ladies would come in, older ladies would come in, they'd have their prayer book with them, and it would be chock full of every holy card you could ever find, every prayer that was ever invented. And they had to say those all of them every day. If they didn't, they weren't doing what God wanted them to do. You know how that works? You've seen those people. They did. And you say, I know how to pray. We don't. Prayer is a supernatural thing. Prayer comes from God, not from you, not from me. I want you to get to the point, at the end of this day, to allowing the Spirit to pray in you. And we have a very hard time doing that. I'm talking about praying no longer in our way, but in God's way. A lot of the old ladies or old men I worked with, not so much the men, they didn't go into that sort of thing, but they weren't praying so much as they were doing reckoning. They were counting How many prayers did I say today? How many rosaries did I say today? No. That's not prayer, that's arithmetic. You're keeping score? Listen, prayer is about something else. It's not about you. It's not about your skills with the calculator. Not at all. At best, we pray in our own way, like the ladies are talking about. We pray in our own way. And because we're so infinitely varied, we have infinite ways of doing this. Mother Teresa used to say, Mother Teresa, teach me the way to pray best. You know what she said? She said, the way to pray best is the best way to pray is the way you pray best. But you have to come to that. You have to let the Lord well up inside you. I don't want you doing arithmetic. I want you to be doing prayer, conversing with Him. Okay? We do not pray in His way. We pray the way we think is best. Only He can produce in us the kind of prayer that I'm talking about. I'm talking about those moments of silence. You know me. I'm talking about those moments of silence and peace that come on us without our knowing where they came from. I'm talking about those moments when we pay no heed to what's going on inside our busy heads. Where it's there, it's kind of going, it's bouncing off the corner of my cranium, but I'm not paying attention to it. Why? Because He's riveted my attention on His presence. I'm talking about those moments. We pray, and we pray excellently with a simple, direct prayer that God will understand perfectly. But what He does is to take us out of ourselves and into His Son. That's the kind of prayer I want you to do. This prayer is empty of imagination and of reasoning. It's empty of perceptions and images and understandings. It's apparently so passive and yet so active. It is, as far as the limitations of this allow, it is pure adoration in the spirit of truth. In our past, our Catholic spiritual tradition, we have called this the prayer of silence. You've heard that spoken of. We've called this the prayer of quiet. You've heard that, I'm sure. We've called this the prayer of the simple gaze, just looking at God. We've called this the prayer of bare faith. This is the kind of prayer that I want you to practice when you leave this place today. This is the kind of prayer in which God gradually trains you in this art of communicating with Him. So, that's the background to what I had to tell you. That's the all cut up here, change, the microphone. That's the background to what I had to tell you, and that's what we're going to be doing throughout the day. Jacqueline, did I leave something out? Did I make something clearer? Jacqueline, I'm 70 years old, and I've known Jacqueline for 9 years and all my life. Figure that one out, you people who are skilled at arithmetic. Somehow, she has gotten inside my head, and she knows what I should be saying when I don't say it. Did I say what I was supposed to say?
You're
All right.